Salutations, everybody! It is Matty here today, and welcome to episode 0 of Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast.
And it's me, Karak, with ACG, and a perfect number, 0. That's what we're worth.
Absolutely.
We'll do one podcast, we won't even name it, and then that'll just be it. Be like, welcome to episode 0, never again.
Never happening. So, ladies and gentlemen, first of all, thank you for lending your time here today. This is a brand new show, an Xbox show at that. But before we get into what this show is, what we're going to be doing on this show, the goal of this show, everything, and then into our topic for today, we wanted to introduce ourselves because maybe you've never heard of us, maybe you have no idea who we are. So, Karak, you're one of our hosts. I want to start off with you. Who the hell are you?
It's a deep question. Karak with ACG. I started reviewing in 2013, 2014. I think. Prior to that, I worked in various, I was setting up call centers around the world, but I was also doing mods on the side and messing around with, various different software and stuff like that. Got a lot of developers who are friends. And when I was laid off, I was like, hey, man, let's do this. Let's make this a thing. Let's see what could happen. And I've been lucky, man. Really, really lucky. I do reviews mostly. I do other videos that do terrible. Absolutely horrendous. So if I do a review, I'm good to go. Bro, if I do any other video that doesn't have review in it, it's a disaster. Like the numbers, so I continue to do them because I'm stubborn as fuck. So I'm like, all right, man, you don't like this? I'm going to do another one. But it's, we do Dungeons and Dragons podcasts now. We do we do reviews, or I should say I do reviews. And it's been, it's awesome. YouTube mostly, some Twitch on the side. But
right.
Twitch is a difficult beast when you come out of YouTube and try to do it.
100%. For those who don't know me, I am MrMattyPlays. You can just call me Matty. You don't got to call me Mr. Matty or anything like that. Matty is fine with me. And what I do is mostly RPG content. Like Karak, I focus on YouTube. So I'm always creating videos each and every single day over on YouTube. And while I'm over there, I'm also making reviews. I tried to up my game. I also, funny enough, I didn't know this because we've been working together for years, but we started reviewing at the same exact time, about 6 years ago or so. And so you're far better at it than me, so you've progressed more. But we have been reviewing for about the same amount of time, which is kind of interesting. But yeah, I try to do game reviews, and I focus more so on news, but more so in the RPG genre. It's my favorite genre of gaming. And so that has been my calling card for the last number of years. Now, as for Karak and I, this is where I think it really does impact you all. Now that we got some of our icebreakers out of the way, is that Karak and I have been podcasting together for about 3 years now. We're going on 4 years together. Yeah. So when we came up with this show idea with Colin, me and Colin were talking, and I wanted Karak to be the host with me because we just had a really good chemistry, to be honest. And Karak's one of my closest friends on the platform, and we thought this would be the most natural way to do it. We've ran the Ham Radio podcast for 3 years together, as well as with Dustin, who is the executive producer here for Last Stand. So it's a weird crossover, and I feel like this really solidifies that crossover even more so with Defining Duke, which if you couldn't tell by the name, it is an Xbox show. So let's go ahead. Let's get into the goal of this show now. That you've been properly introduced to us. You're going to be stuck with us for however many episodes we decide. We shall see based off maybe you hate this, and that's it. The show's over right here and now. You're like, get this guy the fuck out of here. Get us a duo.
I would love that. It would be amazing if we were just like, no, stupid. Moving on.
We're okay. So the goal of this show is we want it to be the best gaming show that you can listen to, of course, but we also want to keep Xbox fans in mind. So much like with the Sacred Symbols product from Colin and Chris, we're here to make a show for everybody who plays games. So even if you're not in a particular ecosystem, we want you to be able to listen and enjoy yourself and learn. So you'll find a great show regardless, but do know this is going to be geared in a way towards Xbox fans, which we'll describe in a little bit, because every episode of Defining Duke, we're going to have you really driving the show. We do this on the Ham Radio podcast. As I mentioned, Sacred Symbols does the same thing. We want to have viewer and listener involvement as much as possible, so we're going to be going through the Last Stand Patreon. We're grabbing your questions. We're going to load the show up with them from the beginning to the end. So we're going to start the show with your questions. We're going to go through the news together. We're going to have your questions peppered throughout that show. And then at the end of it all, we're going to round it up with your questions. So we want to make sure you're a big focal point of this show. And like I mentioned, we're going to be doing a news roundup, what's happening in the world of Xbox, PC gaming in general. We're going to have a Game Pass pick of the week. Karak and I are going to sit down, sift through Game Pass every week, and pick through that wonderful catalog of games on what you should be looking at that week, just because it's a revolving door for that program, and we love it, and we think the value there is insane, and we want to really continue to spotlight that, and we think it's an important part of the Xbox ecosystem. And we also want to highlight PC deals of the week, so parts, deals on maybe like Humble Bundle, digital deals, that type of stuff. And we're going to grow this, right? This is what we want to call a healthy foundation. We want to make sure we have something kind of laid out for all of you there that we want to move forward with. And if you want to evolve that formula, you want to add more to that, or maybe it's fine just as is, the feedback is going to be very important as we grow this show. But last and certainly not least, early access will be available on patreon.com/laststand every Thursday. And episodes will be airing for free on all podcast apps across the internet on Sunday. So if that's how you want to listen, by all means, we just want to have you here because I genuinely think we have a really special podcast here. And this is probably the most professional you're going to hear us. So enjoy it while it's here. Enjoy it while it's here. You're probably like, God, this guy's a snoozer.
I've dialed myself down a little bit, which is going to go off the rails here soon. But I've purposely been like, this is more professional.
Yeah,
I'm not going to interrupt as much or joke around as much, at least at first. It'll die out, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
It's like right now I'm like prim and proper. This is the most prim and proper you'll see us ever.
Yeah. Absolutely. So right now we're like absolutely shaking with anticipation to just ruin your day. So with that, let's go ahead and get started with episode 0. So episode 0, the goal here is it's going to be a little bit different from our standard episode program, kind of like how I mentioned where we had the news and stuff. We're not doing that this episode because we want this to serve as a primer. We'll be analyzing the current landscape of 2021 for Team Xbox and their slate of releases in this year. Obviously, this is subject to change. There's going to probably be more announcements, more additions to this, even delays as well, depending on how the state of the world evolves. We'll see how things change. But we thought that this would be a great entry point for people, whether you're an Xbox fan or not. So if you are one, this would be a great conversation for you to listen to. But if you're investing yourself for the first time in this ecosystem, you're going to be learning a lot on where to keep it locked for this year, kind of moving forward. And starting with episode 1, we'll be picking up the news and involving you all more alongside that. Now, Karak, shall we begin with Xbox's 2021 lineup?
Let's do it.
All right. This is where we get less professional because now the show's actually begun. I'm excited.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. That was your, that's more professional than I was even at my own wedding. And that's it. Now it's off the rails. So put your kids to bed. I'm going to tell you that much.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, right. So we got a lot of interesting games here. When I was doing research for Xbox in 2021 and I was typing up this show, I got to say, they may not have a bunch of heavy hitters, but Xbox has a lot of interesting third-party exclusives and a lot of like first-on-Xbox exclusives. So we're going to start off with some of the big daddies, so to say, like a Halo Infinite, which is by 343 Industries. It was pushed back to fall 2021 in a December 2020 Halo Waypoint post. This post also confirmed that the game has seen major visual improvements across all areas of the game, from armor details to facial animations, different types of brute builds being implemented, FX/light tweaking, and much, much more after plenty of backlash had landed in the laps of Microsoft when the gameplay had been revealed back in July of 2020. So what we're going to do with this conversation is just bring up the game, kind of lay out a general synopsis like that, and then just talk about it. What do we expect for 2021 with this game? Are we excited for it? Just general chatting of each game by game. So, Karak, where do you stand with Halo Infinite right now? I mean, it's so far out. It had a really bad showing. Are you excited?
Yeah, and I want to say people watching, this is actually cool because we do general podcasts. So the idea of doing one that's sort of restricted is actually cool, whether it be PlayStation, Switch even would be fantastic. Because I'm such a Switch fan, but also Xbox, because I feel that, like you said, sometimes people sort of forget that they have exclusives, and you'll hear it, by the way. And what makes people uncomfortable right now is that with PlayStation doing Horizon Zero Dawn, Death Stranding on the PC, all the people who were like, it's exclusive to the PlayStation, suddenly are like, it's it's sort of exclusive. And you're all, dude, you're dealing with what we've, as Xbox fans, what Xbox fans have dealt with for years, which is like Halo being on everything, that kind of stuff. I also want to say that the backlash, you and I got some backlash. I think me probably, it depends. We both got backlash for Cyberpunk. And you get backlash for stuff. And a company gets backlash for Halo, and people think it means that you hate it. And I think that there is for sure a contingent of people who hate it, but there's also a contingent of people who want the the magistry, that fucking magic that happened in the original Halo to be there. And when you see that brute show up, and he's like, dur-dur-dur, it's like me instead of fucking, Selena Gomez showing up. You're just like, dude, seriously? This is not what I paid for. I have no clue who this dude. Even if I had a musical voice, people would still be like, sorry, man, this is not what I want.
Yeah.
And that's what it showed up. So these things where they talk about the lighting effects, all that is great. I'm really excited. I'm also devastated. And this is where talking to devs and stuff, I'm devastated it got to this point, and it shouldn't have, which leads to a crushing overall summary of what's occurred up to this point, who was in charge, how it got there. So not only has this been announced, but they also rehired one of the creators of Halo to help them, which is a huge deal. Personally, I don't think 2021 is it, though. I'm just going to put my foot down. I do not believe that 2021 is when Microsoft should release Halo. I think that 2022, with a huge explosive, announcement and showing good increases on the fidelity would be better. I'll probably be wrong. But what I saw doesn't look like a fix by 2021.
Yeah. See, the reason I think they're going to try to push it out by 2021 is because there is a certain anniversary happening in 2021. And yeah, it is, I believe it's the anniversary of Halo 1. And so they would release it. The rumor is someone from 343 had tweeted out like, oh, there's a certain day in November that everyone's going to be celebrating. And
okay.
I believe it's November 13th. I'd have to double check. But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're going to force it out just for maybe nostalgia's sake. Also a celebration of Halo at the same time. I would like to say 2022 as well. I just think that would make the most sense, because here's the reality is, I love Halo. I want to make that clear off the bat, because I know some people are coming in for the first time listening to us. They don't know our tastes. So if I make it sound like I'm spelling out my opinion to you a lot in this episode, it's just because I want to make it clear where I stand. I do love Halo. Not as much as I used to, but like many people, I'll sound like a broken record. I grew up on Halo 1, 2, 3. Those are some of my favorite gaming memories as a kid. So, of course, I want this game to succeed, but the reality is that Halo isn't Microsoft's kind of killer app nowadays. And with the amount of studio acquisitions they made, I think Microsoft is aware of that. So if Halo does get pushed into 2022, it's not like a devastating blow for Xbox. It is one of their kind of flagships. It's one of the most recognizable brands. But as it stands now, Halo is not going to just ship a metric ton of systems. Now, the reality is that could change because of the free multiplayer that the game is coming with. That you don't have to, the rumor is that maybe they'll get rid of Xbox Live Gold. You won't need that. And then you've got a really interesting system here for Halo Infinite that can get a lot of players in through the door, and maybe Halo has a bit of a renaissance. But as it stands now, I don't think it's going to be the savior of Xbox. I think it's a combined effort. It's not going to be just one game. They sort of need to go on a roll here, like PlayStation did, where they're just releasing like desirable game after desirable game after desirable game, and it's another banger. It's like another critical darling, that type of stuff. Which isn't just going to be defined by Halo or any of these games on this list. They all need to be pretty good. But what we'll notice as we go down this list is that there is a wide diversity of titles here. Like Halo Infinite, it's a first-person shooter. We saw a lot of movement in the gameplay. We saw a lot of things happening, but it did seem to have that Halo heartbeat to it. As Joseph Staten called it, like the 30 seconds of action, constantly happening.
Can I shoot a hole in something though, real quick?
Oh, by all means, I love it.
I think the anniversary is full of shit because they were going to release it last year.
Right.
Which wouldn't have been the fucking anniversary.
That is true.
Additionally, and this isn't saying you're full of shit. I'm saying that number's full of shit. And I think that I think that when we look at this, You can't have it both ways, which obviously you're going to get tired of hearing. Matty's had to hear it for 3 years. But we can't sit here and pretend that the same fans are going to care that a game is released in 2020 and pretend it's good if it's not. Those Halo fans would much rather have a 2019 game, a 2020 game, 2020 being the one we thought was going to happen, and have it be good, versus a perfect year. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the only people who really care about anniversaries are the people who are celebrating the specific day, and then they move on. I have to live with Halo for as long as they want to support Halo. And I'm going to tell you right now, if they say, we're going to release a great game in 2021 that we're going to support for a long time, or we're going to release an absolute shit game in 2020, or a game that is not up to par, I would simply say, look at Cyberpunk. Whether people listening agree or disagree, it doesn't really matter whether you do, because the developers agree with me. The developers themselves state that Cyberpunk was not ready. I would not want Halo to do the same. In fact, I would love for all these companies to say, let's take a step back. It's obvious. It's obvious shit's affecting us, whether it be the viruses, whether it be whatever, something's affecting us. And the other thing is this 20 years, that's great and all, but the number of people still in gaming and the number of people brand new in gaming, you and I have talked about this, whenever anybody mentions an old game and says, you know, that like everything hinges on that, I'm like, dude, a lot of you people weren't alive when it came out. So does it really hinge on it? What it should hinge on is if it's a good game. And I would rather have those guys say, let's hold off, because 343's production has not been great.
Yeah, I agree.
I love Halo. Their production, though, not up to Halo standards overall.
No, it hasn't been. I 100% stand by that. Yeah, it is. By the way, I double checked. It was not November 13th. It was November 15th. November 13th is my mother's birthday.
Well,
so
hey, dude,
Mom.
Maybe call them up and be like, my mom's birthday is 2 days prior. Could you release Halo? Maybe they'll be like, yes, we will.
Yeah. Anyway, Halo Infinite supposedly coming fall 2021. We'll have to see about that. For me, I'm never sold on the blog posts. The screenshots did look good, but at the end of the day, I don't want to tag on to Cyberpunk too hard because the conversation has been really beaten to death. But the reality is that I think trust in game companies and what they say is not as strong as it previously was.
It's an all-time low.
Yeah, you want to see what they're talking about, and seeing screenshots versus seeing it in action, two different things. So for me, I am looking forward to Halo Infinite. I want to see it in action again, though, with all of these supposed updates that they have brought to the table.
Agreed.
With that, we move on to game number 2 on our list, and we got a lot to go through. Psychonauts 2. Now, this was teased in 2015. Double Fine's 3D action platformer was supposed to release in fall of 2019 before slipping into mid-2020, only now to be delayed into 2021. Despite Xbox acquiring Double Fine in 2019, Double Fine will be honoring backers on all systems, so fret not if you're listening to this and maybe you're on PlayStation or something like that. And with the original ending on a cliffhanger, 2021 is hopefully the year we will see how Rasputin's story ends up on Xbox, PC, and PlayStation. Now, Karak, are you a Psychonauts guy? Have you played Psychonauts before?
Yes, I have. I wasn't a Psychonauts VR fan, which was their VR game that came out for the PSVR. It wasn't great.
Ooh, that sounds like something that would make you throw up.
It was a little off. I mean, I don't know. You have a PSVR, or do you just have the...
I do not.
Okay.
Oculus. I just have the spy device.
You just have the spy device. my fucking MySpace just calling in. They're like, we need to know exactly what Matty's doing right now. I mean, I'm a Psychonauts fan. I'm also a platformer fan. And I'm also fully behind Microsoft offering as many genres as possible. So to me, this is exciting. Dude, I mean, it's an LSD trip. It's DMT. It's like playing a game in Joe Rogan's brain. So to me, this is sort of cool regardless. Psychonauts is old, though. So this is, again, another title that's been... This was Kickstarted, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So this was Kickstarted prior to Microsoft even owning these guys. Microsoft, thankfully enough, you know, saying, hey, and these guys saying, hey, everybody will get supported. They'll get their versions. I'm excited for it. I just don't know what it'll offer. You know, platformers have stepped up. Some of them, like, what's the squirrel that we like so much? PS4? Jeez, I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, Squirrel. I mean, I know it's Sly Cooper.
No. The other one. It's not a squirrel. It's
Ratchet?
Yeah, Ratchet and Clank. Sorry. Ratchet and Clank, not a squirrel.
The Wombats.
Whatever, you know. But they stepped that up graphically and stuff. So I'm really excited to see if Psychonauts aims for that kind of level on everything.
Yeah, I for me, I'm not a huge Psychonauts fan. I remember playing the demo. I think there was a demo. If not, I played it or rented it at Blockbuster. But I played it as a kid, and I just think it was a little too weird for me as a young lad. And so I never got too into it. But what I'm excited about now, as an older man, is I'm looking forward to just something a little bit different. When you think of all these games here that we're going to be talking about, they will all be on Game Pass at one point or another. And so I think of it that way, right? You log into that app and you see now there's another new 3D platformer there that has been worked on by Microsoft. It better be damn good. They've taken a long time with it.
Yeah.
But, I'm glad they are, because for a lot of people, I know how much this game means. I know for a lot of folks, they've been waiting years and years for Psychonauts 2. So 2021 stands to be a great year in gaming for people just for this alone. But for me personally, I'm just looking forward to like a palate cleanser, right? Like something a bit different. We've been hit with so many open world games. So many games like to use the RPG tagline. So for me personally, I'm just happy to see something that's not that. And that be it. Like, I've been playing visual novels these last number of days just because I'm so tired of constantly just leveling up and shit that I just want to have some stories. And I've been playing the Somnium Files. That's what I've been playing on my PS5, and it's been fantastic. Yeah, it's very weird, but it's been fantastic. It's one of those games where have you ever played games where like everything has to have this like deep meaning?
Oh yeah.
Everything has to have like, it connects to this
Everything
Greek goddess,
else. Yeah.
which connects to this, which connects to the speed of the messaging, and it's ridiculous. But it has been refreshing. Ridiculous but refreshing. All right. Moving on. Next game, Shredders. This is a snowboarding game that the website directly says this. I had to include this quote. Inspired by the early Amped games, with multiplayer at its core, developed by iLusions and Let It Roll. This is coming to Xbox first. They didn't even mention PC. This is on Xbox first. So I found that quite interesting, and it's apparently releasing winter 2021. Now, I know you and I are big Amped fans, right?
Huge. The
Hell
hugest.
Yeah.
If I had a tattoo, it would probably be an Amped tattoo.
Dude, yeah, I'd get that shit stamped on my back. I loved Amped as a kid. I mean, I go back and forth. Like, I like SSX on Xbox 360.
Yeah,
that was that's on Game Pass. Highly recommend it. It's also on EA Play. It is phenomenal. It's just very wild and crazy, the tricks you do. But Amped was this mixture of arcade, but somehow feeling real. Like, there was a weight to the gameplay. I don't know how they did it, but it felt so good to play. And I remember as a kid grinding it out. And I actually I picked up a complete in box copy a couple months ago just to kind of go back.
Every one of those. And the thing about Amped is, it versus SSX was SSX liked to do the tricks on the digital pad and stuff. So it felt a little arcadey, where Amped, a lot of the stuff was on that analog and you were just starting to get accustomed to it. And then 3, you could build your own part. Like, dude, like, that game was ahead of its time. That was one more time where like Microsoft was like, hey, try something, that's a little, it was actually ahead of its time. It was almost like a Tony Hawk prior to Tony Hawk's kind of games, where it was one of the first.
It really was. The controls are a good point, because I remember like there was a good transition, because I think I had played it late. So I came from like Tony Hawk on the 64 to Amped on my original Xbox, and there was something there that felt natural.
There's a DNA that's connected between those two.
Yeah, and that's when because it was able to still make its own identity. So Shredders was inspired by that game. Does that have you a little more excited? Sadly, there's no gameplay. When I was doing research for all these games, I was watching trailers, I was slapping everything together, and I couldn't find anything on this outside of a little kind of tech teaser. But they do say multiplayer is at the core, so you can find spots with your friends, and kind of reminds me a little bit of that Ubisoft game. What was that? Steep. That's what it was. Yeah.
So, am I excited? Yeah. Do I think multiplayer at its core is good? No. And let me tell you why. Because I've gone snowboarding a lot in my life, and the last time me and a friend were close enough to be on the same screen snowboarding was 0 times. Yeah. People do not hang out and fucking fist bump the entire time where they're snowboarding. So to me, the idea of multiplayer being its core is a little bothersome, because I think multiplayer could be in, and it would certainly be great, where I would rather have it be single player. But you know what? How many times have we been wrong this gen? Like thousands. Thousands. So it's, in fact, Matty, I would love for companies to not say sometimes. Just,
yeah,
right? Because then that preconceived notion of multiplayer, And now
you
you're
wipe it away.
Yeah, and or you're ratcheted to sort of give it a chance, and sometimes it's like, why? Why shouldn't you just be giving everything a chance? But it's because they say stuff like that. And it's I do like the idea of inspired by early amped, but you know what that's going to do? Cause me and you to look at it and go, is it? Which is also, it's like that. It's like the positive and negative at the same time. Positive of recognizing a term and a name, but negative of holding it against it if it doesn't match up.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is, what's good is amped is amazing for people like us, right? And I think a lot of people understand it's a great game, but it's not like this timeless gem like it is for someone like us. So we are fortunately, you know, a dime a dozen. You know, we're not out there in spades, but unfortunately, it could lead to some disappointment. I'm excited though.
I have a question for you.
Go for it.
If you had to rank, the honest truth, not worrying about what people say, if you had to rank Tony Hawk versus Amped, the honest truth, would you rate Amped higher? Because I'm going to tell you, if I talked about pure enjoyment, not ignoring that Tony Hawk is amazing, I would actually say my pure enjoyment was higher on Amped.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is I played so much Tony Hawk, like many people my age growing up, but
if you have kids, they'll fucking know the songs for some reason.
Yeah. They'll just hear a song and be like, I've heard this somewhere. But Amped is just Amped had there was a feeling, man. There was a feeling you got when you played it. Like you mentioned, 3 was just out there. Yeah. You know, it was just wild, and like you said, it's perfectly put. It was ahead of its time. I gotta say, I probably have a stronger love for Amped, but when it comes to Tony Hawk, personally, I spent way more time. You know, and not because I enjoy this shit less, I'm gonna play it more. It was just that when I was big on Blockbuster, as I already indicated earlier on. I rented a lot of games, and so for me, like, Tony Hawk was a good rental. That's like I can bang this out in a weekend.
And it was the zeitgeist. Everybody knew about Tony Hawk.
Yeah, exactly, right?
That's like Crazy Taxi. Like, if I mention Crazy Taxi, people are like, yeah. The music from it. They may not even know the game. So, no, I get it. It's fair.
Yeah, because, I was playing, like, Kingdom Hearts 2, but I had no one to talk about that with. So I had to keep up with the popular titles. Otherwise, I would have just been a dork with no friends.
Everybody's talking about the game, and you're like, well, I'm playing a game with Disney characters and a dude who uses a sword that's a giant key. And they're like, wow.
And his feet are fucking bigger than my torso.
Yeah, his feet are Mickey Mouse feet. Fucking, like, the size of my head and shit. Yeah, I remember that.
Well, that's Shredders. Next is something that I think people will be more familiar with. Warhammer 40k Darktide. This is coming from the same developers as Warhammer Vermintide 2, Fat Shark, and they'll be bringing Warhammer 40k Darktide exclusively to Xbox and PC in 2021 for another horde-focused co-op adventure, except this time we're in the city of, and you can correct me if I pronounce this wrong, Tertium?
Have no clue. I just saw that, and when I heard you saying you can correct me, I'm like, no, I can't.
I have no clue. I thought you were a Warhammer guy.
I do, but I don't know the pronunciation of that. It does look right, though. I mean,
now, you and I love Vermintide.
Yes.
Darktide is more so a spin-off of a spin-off at this point. And I think it's a place to soft reset, get more people involved. I actually recently bought Vermintide 2 on my PC. And it's just been a really good time. It's the perfect shut your brain off game. For those who don't know what Vermintide is, think of Left 4 Dead, but you've got medieval classes and you're fighting rats. It's still the same thing, like,
dude, bro, whoever likes Warhammer, send him hate mail right now. You never fuck that up, brother. Never.
I call them rats?
You call them rat. They're Skaven, man.
Oh, no.
Dude,
no.
Yeah, it's like calling me a monkey, man. I mean, dude, seriously, I'm going to come at you because no, I'm just joking. Go ahead.
Dude, I mean, look, now I'm nervous. It's a brand new show.
I know.
People are like, this fucking idiot.
No.
The Skaven are these enemies you fight, and there are special types. Just like in Left 4 Dead, you have special types of zombies, like ones that'll leap on you or ones that'll drag you away. Kind of same thing in this game. But I think it's a little more intense because instead of having guns and shooting from a distance, you're maybe up close with like dual daggers or a giant axe or a huge hammer. There's just a lot of ways to approach combat, and there's abilities, and it's just a really fun time to keep replaying the game because you'll roll loot at the end of levels and upgrade your character, and put in talent points. And so this is coming from that same studio. I got to say, when I watched the Darktide trailer, we talked about this in our own podcast, Ham Radio Podcast. I shouldn't say our own, we own this as well, but our other podcast, the sound effects. I know that may sound like a really weird thing to mention, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, but there is this one point in the trailer where a character swings a great hammer and connects with a Skaven, I believe it was, and just you hear the crunch, and it was immensely satisfying. And so it's one of those things where with the new suite of weapons and classes that they may be offering with this game, I'm very much looking forward to this one, and especially for Xbox to get a co-op adventure. I mean, we got to just go ahead and reflect here. You've got a snowboarding game, a 3D platformer, a flagship first-person shooter. You know, I think they're really filling in a lot of holes here. Like, you may not have that, oh, this is Horizon, but having a really strong co-op game that either A, all of your friends can hop onto Game Pass and be like, let's download this together, or B, you can just buy and you know it's in that Microsoft ecosystem. I think this is a big win for them in a really strange way. Like I said, as we go through this list, you're going to see some very interesting third-party gets for them, and this is one of the more standouts. Are you excited for Darktide? Is this one of the more anticipated titles for you? Because I know how much we like Vermintide.
Yeah, and if you guys get a chance, I have Victor Magnuson, who's the lead dev for Vermintide. He's been on the podcast like 9 times. They did, what was the football fantasy game by the makers of Hades?
Oh, Blood Bowl?
No, Blood Bowl's Cyanide. It was like Blood Bowl, but it was called Pyre.
Pyre? Yeah.
So we had Pyre, Mad Max, and Vermintide devs on the and Surge 2 podcast. We've had Victor on a couple times. And I would say the reason why he's on isn't just because I like the dude and he talks to people like us at a pretty low level, but it's also that I just fell in love with Vermintide. I fell in love with sound. I fell in love with the combat. It's one of the few games where a shield is a thing, like a full thing. Yeah. You not only block and have counts for blocks, but you can knock people aside. Like, it's just fun. Like you said, it's not perfect. No game's perfect. And I heard a lot of people, when this popped, you and I talked about this in your podcast, this popped, and some people were like, I hope they don't leave it like Fat Shark. And then I went and looked, and I'm like, it's weird, because they supported the fuck out. Now, admittedly, most games that are supported for a long time always have complaints from their fan base one way or the other, Destiny being a perfect example of that. Destiny also failing in multiple ways. But I would say this game, at least, I recently played Vermintide. It's eminently playable. Darktide, yeah, that's my shit, man. That's my jam. I do wonder how guns will work, because you have a couple side guns and ranged in Vermintide, but they're very well limited. There's some gameplay systems in there that limit those. The Dwarf's crossbow is pretty overpowered. Anybody who's played that probably knows what I'm talking about. But that's the one thing about Darktide I would say it makes me wonder, because I believe they've chosen the cityscape of Warhammer. It's not going to be, so we know it won't be Space Marines. That wouldn't make any sense. It's going to be like the lower like gangs and their battles. And I'm just wondering how they'll handle ranged. That's the one thing. Like, because I don't want a pot shot. I mean, I guess if they go Left 4 Dead, Left 4 Dead more than me. I actually played some Left 4 Dead, but I wasn't in love with it. Left 4 Dead was the opposite, right? It was more ranged and less.
Yeah. See, the thing with Left 4 Dead that, because as I've just gone back and played Vermintide, what I noticed was I liked how you'd be making sort of choices based off encounters, which I don't do in Left 4 Dead. So what I mean by that is,
right, okay.
Oh, I have a lot of enemies here. I would be playing as the alpha. Do I take out my bow and arrow and use like the special ability and kind of have the arrow ricochet and take them all out? Do I do a block and stagger and then try to slash them with my daggers? There was like a choice per encounter, so to speak. Because you could get killed really easily. Whereas in Left 4 Dead, I felt like it was a spray and pray almost. And that's not a bad thing, because
no.
At the core of both these games, it's the same idea of like, you can kind of passively play them. You can talk to a friend while you're playing them, or you can really ramp up the difficulty and then everyone can just engage on another level. There is a certain heartbeat to this type of genre that just, if it's designed properly, works really well. So yeah, with Darktide including guns, I did remember seeing that in the trailer. It is one of those things where I trust the balance of it, because for example, the bow and arrow worked really well because you had different types of bows, you had different speeds of your shot, you had abilities connected to it, and then the ammo was heavily limited, at least early on, I should say. So if they give you like a gun that does a ton of damage and can blast, say, 5 enemies in front of you, but you got to reload it per shot, like that's a fair trade-off. So
yeah.
it's one of those things where I trust that they'll handle it pretty well, because I feel if you have that one class off the get-go that's clearly better, like everyone just needs a strength and a weakness, I feel. And so if you can offer something like that, like I do remember that there was a dwarf class in Vermintide too. I forgot its exact name, but the dwarf was pretty powerful.
Yeah, there's a couple, and I will also say I believe Vermintide might be the only game of these sort that does it. A game called After Earth, I believe. There was a shooter that didn't review well. I enjoyed it actually. It had a lot of interactions that you do, but one of the positives of Vermintide was they knew the size of the characters. For example, a dwarf being shorter, ball sack height. So what they did was they made a level where the entire starting was in grass, and you couldn't see as a dwarf, and you had to actually use the other players and say, where are the bad guys, because you legitimately could not see them. My hope is that every company does that. They integrate the graphics and the gameplay. It's not just about a stat. The visuals of the game were different for a dwarf than everybody else. My hope is Darktide does something, and I don't know what that would be. It could be somebody having the ability to see infrared, and so now it matters. Almost like Alien, if you ever did the not Colonial Marines, but the Alien versus Predator games. I would love for them to adjust that. Go for it.
I mean, just because the name itself, when you said Darktide, it just made me think like using darkness, making dimly lit levels. I mean, that... Yep. Lighting can be really just. I've played a lot of games
sound to make the that more important over the visual.
We always talk about Nier Automata as like a shining example of where you have the robots, the androids like red eyes lighting up a cave, and there's like nothing else, and you're just using that to guide your way through combat as you like fight your way, and it's incredible, right? And so there's a lot of ways where sound and the use of light can really give a level of unique feel. Like I think of, and this wasn't even an amazing game, but it had some standout design moments. Shadow of the Tomb Raider.
There is absolutely.
There's one part where I was shimmying along a little ledge and I kicked a helmet, and you see it drop off a ledge, and then you just hear it hit the ground like 5 seconds later, and you're like, holy fuck, that's a drop. Like, I don't want to fall now.
Yep.
And so just little things like that can create atmosphere. So hopefully they get creative in that way. We shall see, but we're clearly excited for this one.
Yeah.
It's high up on the list. Next, we got to talk about a company, right? I wanted to throw this one in the middle because I know a lot of Xbox fans are probably curious about where we stand on it. And also, given that we've really heard mostly Colin and Chris's thoughts when it comes to the Last Stand platform, I'm sure people want some different ideas on Bethesda. What is the plan in 2021 with Bethesda? This is the year we're going to find out what Microsoft actually wants to do with them, because the ink will dry on the deal. All the approvals will hopefully go through. And so we'll officially be able to learn, because according to Phil Spencer, they could not talk on it because right now they're legally not able to. So we're trying to do a lot of reading between the lines here, but presumably 2021 will boast more from like Elder Scrolls Online, more from Fallout 76, but it's also possible we see Starfield this year. It's possible we see Wolfenstein 3 this year. We have not seen Wolfenstein outside of Youngblood in quite some time. So it is possible we see these games. But for Bethesda as a whole, what do you expect? And obviously we're talking in exclusivity, because for me, I sit on the side of the fence. I think that Microsoft is going to lock them up. Like we mentioned with Halo Infinite, it's not like that's a flagship title in the sense of it's going to be a major system seller. It'll be a big part of their plan, but I think something like an Elder Scrolls 6 or having Starfield be a real banger, or saying we got Wolfenstein 3, I think that type of stuff does stand a chance at being exclusive. With that in mind, Starfield was being shopped for exclusivity to PlayStation in the summer of last year.
Yeah.
So that is something that people do need to keep in mind. Bethesda was already open to it. They were trying to secure some cash. I think they were struggling a little bit more than people were aware. But now that they are with Xbox, Karak, what's their plan?
Well, I will say that I had heard the shopping, but I had heard it was the opposite, and Sony had gone to them, because I don't know if you had saw, but multiple people had said that a bunch of third parties have been approached by Sony, not the other way around. Sony supposedly threw more money. The rumor, and it was backed up by a couple journalists, was that not that really fucking matters, but the rumor was
hold on,
was that an extraordinary amount of money was being offered by Sony in excess, far beyond anything Microsoft was offering. But Bethesda didn't do that. Now, in the history of ever, a company hasn't spent this much and then said, you know what, fuck it, man. Let's make our games on everything. So, you know, I think it's good to disavow yourself of any idea that most of these will come on anything else, unless Microsoft sees a huge jump up or Sony says, hey, let's do game streaming on the PlayStation, right? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. I think this year we won't see Starfield unless Microsoft states, here's what's coming. I think for releases, the only thing you can look at is some titles that we haven't seen the announcements for from some of the side companies. Because a lot of people ignore that, you know, Microsoft didn't just buy Bethesda and like one or two, you know, there's so many. It was 13, right? 13 companies, I believe, were involved in that purchase. So including the Dishonored devs. So, right. You know, I don't really have any guesses other than it'll probably be a surprise and it won't be big. I mean, it could be Wolfenstein. That'd be your big one. I just don't see a Starfield or, you know, anything coming out this year. I think 2021 is going to be devoid of a Bethesda thing, unless there was a secret that they, you know, had not shown anybody. Which I don't know about you. Right. You know Bethesda rumors more than me. I haven't heard a single person indicate.
No, they have been locked down tight. They've been locked down. Starfield in particular, there were leaks after the Bethesda, those pictures that came out. I'm pretty confident that was Starfield. You know, not only on good authority, but also just the fact that you just gotta look at the game. It's just I always say it's got the Bethesda stink on it. It just looks like a Bethesda game. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was a very early build of Starfield there. With that said, I think, you know, we don't always want to wrap it back to Cyberpunk, but just given how that game went, I feel like a lot of companies, and most notably Bethesda, who's already been burned by like indulging in that hype so much and then kind of releasing something lukewarm to people, with Fallout 4, is that they'll probably just clamp up. And if they're going to get out this year, we'll know last minute if they are actually going to do that. I thought the game was going to come out this year, to be honest. I think the pandemic fucked up a lot of things. I thought it was going to come out in 2020 just because I know, based off how Bethesda Game Studios is laid out, I know Austin was handling 76 for the most part. The issue was that the box art logo did not distinguish that. So when they released 76, people were like, how did Todd Howard do this? And it's like, well, he worked on it for sure, but it was not to the level of any other previous game. And so with that said, I think that the major Maryland studio has been, you know, hard at work on Starfield for many years, and I thought that last year would have been the year, yeah. And so it's one of those things where 2021, I believe, will be the year, but of course, it you know, there's so much in the air, and I don't think they're in any rush. There's literally no hype for this game because no one knows what it is, and so they can either come out, shock the world, or if I'm them, take your time. You know, there's no demand, which is great. That's what they want. You don't want demand. You know, release it when you're ready. I actually looked up the tweet that what caused and confirmed the PlayStation discussion. It was from Imran Khan. And he had said, the timing on this announcement is absolutely fascinating. The week after Sony solidifies their existing exclusivity with some Bethesda games, but the day before Xbox opens up pre-orders. Fun note, Sony had been negotiating timed exclusivity on Starfield as recent as a few months ago. Going to guess either those talks are done or the price went way, way up. So he just said negotiating. Based off what you're saying, there was more there, as in perhaps Sony had approached them, which would make sense given Sony's track record.
You can bet. I mean, I don't know about you, but most of the time the third-party company doesn't go to the platform holders. That's usually the opposite. Yeah, the platform holder, will go to them. I will say it's interesting you mentioned that because what that does indicate is Sony was willing to discuss something that was so expensive originally. The idea of Bethesda doing an exclusive in the current market means you're talking, you know, probably in excess of $100 million, I would say would be in excess. So the idea that Sony was willing and outright somebody stated they were definitely in some kind of negotiation is pretty crazy because that indicates just one game, people, that they were willing to spend that much money on to possibly get an exclusive, which again, Sony and Microsoft don't one-up each other. I know fans like to think that. Fans are like, man, Phil Spencer heard about Sony. I bet you like they're quarterbacks or something that are instantly on the same team fighting. They're not. They're more like the head coaches. And it's more like different years in a way. So I don't see Microsoft purposely blocking those, but I do see that this purchase almost blocked them de facto. Like, how would you even go? The ones that were already decided, Matty, are one thing, but like, imagine Microsoft looking at something and going, dude, I mean, even secrecy, by the way, these companies would be working on Xbox titles as well as Sony, and then suddenly a competitor has an exclusive. It's like, how do you stop leaks? It's rough, man. It's rough.
Yeah, the interesting part about Bethesda and Xbox is, let's say Starfield would continue with that example. It's not like for the last number of years, Bethesda hasn't been working on no problem. It's not like these last number of years that Bethesda has been negotiating this deal that they haven't been working on, say, a PlayStation version of Starfield. Like, that's got to be happening. So, do they scrap that? I think if you're Xbox, you go, let's do like 1 year exclusivity window, because then, they can double dip. They get the money from any PlayStation copy bought. Microsoft gets a piece of that because they own Bethesda. So that's just like a win-win. But I think it's going to be some form of exclusivity. Not even because of the money spent, because a lot of people don't realize Microsoft's level of investment is not they spend to earn back. Like, they're investing in themselves, right? So it makes their Xbox offering more attractive. And eventually they will make that money back, but they're spending the money because they have that money to spend. Does that make sense? Like, it's Microsoft as a whole. It's not just Xbox writing out this check. So they've probably already made the money back in some different area across the Microsoft brand. So they're not really, I think, going to say, like, let's make Starfield exclusive so that we can make that $7.5 billion back. Like, I don't think that's really exactly how it's going to work out for them. I just think that they're going to make it exclusive because it's going to make their platform a lot more attractive. And it depends on where the industry starts to trend. You start off with this now, and then I've always speculated that one day we're going to be able to go into like Walmart. You're going to be able to buy like a thumb drive, and it's going to have Game Pass on it. You can load it right into your TV. As long as you have a controller and that thumb drive, you can load up that whole Game Pass library. And maybe then it changes where having things on Game Pass day one is super, super important. But right now, as it stands, being able to say your game is on a specific console is a little more impactful. So I think for the time being, you're going to see Xbox really reel in Bethesda and say, hey, these are all exclusive.
Not only that, Matty, but Microsoft has now stated that multiple TVs will most likely have streaming. Imagine Samsung or whatever saying, okay, buy our TV and you've got Game Pass. Microsoft is for sure going to do that. That they want their platform to be well off. And we can't pretend one company wants their platform to be well off and the other doesn't. Sony is quite restrictive. Devs have admitted it. I've talked to devs who have fully admitted it. They're insanely restrictive on what, can happen between. They want the same thing anybody else wants just for them. Like, that's the way it is, right? And so the idea that Microsoft, like you stated, is worried about 7.8 billion as much as worried about in the next 10 years, everything you get has a version, of streaming. I mean, you say don't bring it back to Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk was the biggest game in 8 years, so to me, I have no issue bringing it back to Cyberpunk. I know what you mean, though, but Cyberpunk ran best for a lot of people on streaming. The honest truth is, dude, I don't know how to, it's obvious because it was all the same hardware, but the number of people in my own Discord who were like, bro, I had all versions. And the version I played the longest was the Stadia version. And I'm like, okay, we're in a weird, like, what kind of world are we in right now? So a Bethesda game, I feel the lack of speed in a lot of Bethesda games, the lack of finesse when aiming, maybe you push it to a stream and you say, you got your hardware versions, but hey, I mean, Fallout. I love Fallout, but it's not like Fallout requires perfect Call of Duty like reflexes to engage and beat combat. So
yeah, we'll see. Games like Wolfenstein 3 may, but
oh yeah, true. No, and Dishonored or those kind. Yeah, no, you're absolutely right there.
But in the smaller window of discussion, that is definitely a fact. So I definitely think Bethesda's going to get locked down just because in the long term, I think saying that you have that on your streaming programs and whatnot is just going to be extremely valuable because they have some of the most popular IP in the world. That's just a fact. So with that,
we're talking about it, Manny.
Yeah, I know, right? We'll have our answers soon. That's the good news.
Yeah,
I imagine we'll start to hear talks pick up in the coming months. But we have the Gunk next, Karak. The unfortunately named Gunk, which was announced in 2020 by the creators of SteamWorld. The developers are Image and Form Games. This follows two scavengers as they head to a new planet to make money and end up discovering the aforementioned Gunk, which destroys all it touches. Yeah, this game is it's almost like Blinks the Time Sweeper, except imagine if the furniture was like a fucking parasitic piece of shit on everything. It's like, it's something, man. It's definitely out of everything on this list. I gotta be real, I have no interest or hype for this game. It's cool it exists because once again, maybe it checks a box for someone, but for me, I looked at the Gunk and was positively uninterested.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I like SteamWorld though. I think oh, dude, their games are awesome. So like that could turn, so for that very reason, I'll keep an eye on it. But what I saw, there was a trailer I remember seeing and being like, what? Like
it's the name. I hate the name.
Yeah, I mean
that's just wrong.
Yeah, it's unfortunate.
It's just not okay.
Yeah, it's a little off. I don't know exactly what they were thinking. Maybe, you know what? It might be one of those ones where like we do see a change soon.
Yeah, because here's the thing. It's not like a Ratchet and Clank level innuendo, like an up your arsenal. It's like the Gunk.
Yeah, it doesn't even sound... even as a like a play on words, or not a play on words, but you know what I mean. It still doesn't even sound appetizing.
It's just not like, everyone talks about the word moist, but I think Gunk might give a run for its money.
Can you imagine a game called Moist?
I mean, it's on the same level.
Yeah, it is. It is sort of at the same level.
It's pretty fucking terrible. No offense to the developers, but
imagine a platformer / shooter called Moist and Gunk. That would be amazing. I would pay twice for that. If they were like, dude, Moist and Gunk, and it was like two really grotesque, one obese, just super heavy set, one really skinny, maybe a possible crank issue. Moist and Gunk. I'm gonna push this to somebody. I'm gonna talk to some devs.
Like a buddy cop.
Yeah, just nasty.
Oh my god. All right, more interesting stuff on the horizon here. CrossfireX. This is a first-person shooter heading to Xbox in 2021. Remedy Entertainment, who's known for Control, Alan Wake, Quantum Break, is heading up the single-player portion of this game, while Smilegate, a South Korean developer responsible for the creation of Crossfire in 2007, will be working on the free-to-play multiplayer portion. Crossfire was one of the highest-grossing games for years, so for those wondering how Remedy got involved, this is likely why. They kind of just probably signed them a blank check, said, hey, this single-player campaign will put things on the map for us and make it a more significant release. Have you played Crossfire before? For those who haven't seen it, it's a kind of a... It's literally just like Counter-Strike. It really is.
Yeah.
Created in that window.
No, I don't even know... I remember thinking, well, they must know something I don't know. Because when they announced it, I was like, what's that? CrossfireX, to me, is the AMD ability to put two fucking video cards together. Like, that's what Crossfire used to be. So, like, when they said CrossfireX, I was like, what are they doing? Like, what's this got to do with anything? But on the other hand, I mean, for consoles, maybe this is a big get. I just don't know anything about it other than Remedy, which I love. So, I support them, and I support these guys. I just don't know what's being offered and, what the end all be all will be.
At the end of the day, there was a beta in the summer of 2020, and it just seemed like a Counter-Strike kind of game. It's very popular. It was actually the highest grossing game in 2014, so there are a lot of people getting involved. I think this will be popular. I think people will enjoy it. If they're looking for something like that. Because I remember, for example, I didn't have a gaming PC for a while, and I picked up Counter-Strike on my 360 of all places, and that's where I played with a bunch of buddies of mine, which I know sounds terrible, given that game has like 0 aim assist, but that is where we played for months and months and months. So CrossfireX may be that game for a lot of people, kind of that gateway into a more serious shooter, and I think that's great, especially because it's free to play. You can add that to the list of free to play multiplayer games with Halo Infinite, where I genuinely think Yeah, Phantasy Star. Yeah, we'll be talking about that later. I genuinely think that Xbox is either going to be stripping away the necessity for Xbox Live Gold with accessing these games, or just getting rid of Gold altogether. Because just what we're seeing here is a lot of value being pushed, and it's kind of conflicting with other systems now, in a way that I don't think matches up with their brand identity, right? Like they're the company that's giving you so much. You go, wait, what? Why are you giving me more, man? So I feel like for these games to flourish as free-to-play titles, maybe they get rid of games with gold and all that stuff, and you start rolling those, instead of making them games with gold, you roll them into Game Pass and double down on that.
They could do that, but I'm also firmly of the opinion that Microsoft already, we saw them making moves 4 years ago into China. My belief also is that their idea is that Japan's lost to them, and it's a smart idea. I don't think they can't seem to sell a console in Japan. It's just tough. But if they can make inroads into a China or something like that, then that would offset it financially by billions. And South Korea as well. Like they maybe that's what they're doing is they're saying maybe what they're going to do is repackage this and to not only us but also as more of a here's the American attempt at a story in your South Korean really popular shooter, bring people into it, and I don't know what they'll sell. That's another thing. I don't know how this will sell, as in what it'll cost. Yeah. Because if there is a full single player, is the game still going to be free to play? Then you start running into all this stuff. But I mean, they must have a plan of some kind, because this was announced as well as the other big free to play games. So they have some plan. I just don't know if they think it's us. It may not be you and I they're talking to on this particular game.
Maybe just the single player portion. I think with the multiplayer,
maybe the single player
portion. Global. Yeah, the single players. I think the idea of the single player is to just gateway people into the multiplayer.
It absolutely could be.
That's kind of what I was thinking with this, because it just seems very strange. Because when it was announced, it was more. I'd never heard of Crossfire, so I was thinking, oh, Remedy's making a first-person shooter after Control. What's happening here? Like I was but then you that's why it was so fun researching for this episode, because as I got deeper, you'd start to learn the backstory of all these studios and how really Remedy's just working on a component of a much bigger thing. And so Remedy keeps on kicking, and that's good for all of us. Next up, Second Extinction. This is already out on Steam to mostly positive reviews. It's by System Reaction, and they created a 3-player co-op experience where your main goal is to eradicate mutated dinosaurs who have taken over the planet. So this is not out on Xbox yet, but it is out on PC right now. People seem to really enjoy it. Have you played Second Extinction yet?
Yeah, I did a preview. I have about 150 hours in it, I would say. Maybe 200. The thing about Second Extinction is that it came out in sort of a rough feature set, and there were some issues. But, dude, it's one of the coolest get in and get out shooters I've played, because one of the things it does is it offers random side stories while you're playing. So you may be searching for fallen comrades and a SOS signal, and then you'll be playing and it'll be like, there's a Tyrannosaurus Rex in the local area. Do you want to hunt it? And it'll add it as a bonus quest. And I got to tell you, like, that happened a lot. There were some crazy things, or where you like tranquilize dinosaurs and then call these massive cages down out of the sky, out of space. They smash into the fucking, the dinosaur, grab it, and then shoot back up on thrusters. And it all has this very cool feeling that something exists in space. How many times have we played a game where they're like, you're doing a drop ship and fuck blah blah blah, but there's never a connection between the dropship and you. The dropship is your base, and that's it. It sounds dumb, but in a way, it's a little bit like the dwarf in Vermintide with the grass level, where there's one small connection, and one of the small connections here is that you send things up to your ship, and you see it actively, graphically on the screen. It does have other issues, however, there's something there. And it is mostly positive. I would say I was a little less positive when I played the version I played. And we're supposed to jump into it 2 weeks from now, so maybe I'll love it. I think Fighting Cowboy played it too, if I remember right. Yeah. I think he did a video or two.
He did. Yeah, it looks awesome. I have not played it because I'm not. The thing is I broke my early access promise for Baldur's Gate 3. I caved in. I went with it. I did not regret it. But overall, when I see early access for a game, I just know I'm not going to end up liking it, even if I like the idea that's there. It's a little different with Larian. I want to give them all my money, so, I want to make sure they live every single day and they eat well because they're just, they're my favorites. But with second Extinction, it was one that I couldn't bring myself to, even though I really liked the concept for it. Because the last early access game I bought was Pummel Party. I bought that on Steam, and it's actually really interesting. It's like Mario Party meets Fusion Frenzy, which is such up
my alley.
Fucking good game. I love Fusion Frenzy. You dig it. It would be a great patron game. What stinks is that a lot of the RNG is in the board game, and kind of like Mario Party, you're like, what's the good part about winning all these mini games? And then at the end they count up like bonus awards. But
right,
I just didn't like the mini games that much because some of them just flat out didn't work. So I ended up returning it. But point being is I try to avoid early access as much as possible. With second Extinction, though, this is a game that I have on my radar. I've read the reviews. It looks like it's a really good time. Based off what you said, it sounds great. And it seems like a game that would be right up my alley. But I just want to wait for it to get ironed out more. And I think 2021 will be its official release, and we're going to see it come to Xbox, and that'll be great. Now, here's where we get to, this is my favorite stretch of games, but I tried to cover the more pertinent stuff early on. ExoMecha is next on our list. The team at Twister Red is bringing a free-to-play, once again, this is a theme here, online competitive shooter that takes place on the planet Omeka to Xbox and PC. Not only is it a first-person shooter boasting multiple weapons, vehicles, and you guessed it, mechs that you can use against your foes. Now, ExoMecha is currently slated to release in Q3, Q4 of 2021 with cross-platform play. This game, I don't know when the last time you saw any type of gameplay for it, like the trailer maybe, but it looks awesome if it plays anything like the trailers have sold us.
Yeah, I'm watching. So, did you ever do EDF, Earth Defense Force?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Earth Defense Force has not only the normal organic creatures, but it's got the robots, the 1970s looking robots that fight, and that's certainly the chromatic look of this. It's a little cleaner than I would like, I'll admit. What I mean by that is that it's very arena looking, like it's hard to describe, but there's nothing going on in the world other than it's just set up for the game, which sometimes that burns me out. But I'm watching them fight up close and watching a dude watch two robots fight, and that looks pretty sweet. It's definitely...
Oh, dude, it's like Megazords and fucking Power Rangers. It's insane.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is the first time I've ever heard of this game.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, this was one that was a real standout. It looks amazing. Once again, free to play. So that is...
Okay.
Like I'm saying, man, there's still one more free-to-play game on this list, and so Xbox is kind of dialing into that section of the market, which I do think is smart because there are those stretches of time where you don't want to spend money, but you want to play something.
Yeah, absolutely.
And having a suite of titles like ExoMecha there and all the others I've mentioned, that definitely makes it a lot more appetizing to dive into the Xbox store. But yeah. Not much known on this game. Sadly, they said they're not going to share more until they are closer to their release, but I think that's good news for everyone. So we move on to The Medium, one of the first major releases for Xbox in 2021. The Medium will be releasing January 28th, 2021 for both Series X and S, as well as the PC. As a Medium, you are able to cross between the real world and the spirit world, which, as shown in multiple trailers, is reflected in its gameplay. It also brings a change... I'm sorry. I completely misread my joke on my script.
I'm reading your joke right now.
Yeah. Oh, man. I said, also, bring a change of pants because this is a horror game. But I was like so in that
zone have you ever been like, oh, I have.
Yeah, you're in that zone of being a host that you forget to make fucking jokes. And that is what I did.
Dude, one time I was reading a D&D flavor text to somebody and the word voila. Do you know what voila means? Mm-hmm. Like voila, like a surprise.
Voila,
yeah.
Surprise.
Guess what though? That motherfucker starts with a V. So while I'm reading, I said Viola, and I have not seen a D&D game go from fucking serious to absolute anarchy of laughter so quickly as when you continue to read and your brain doesn't like put the proper tone on it.
Oh, dude, the worst is when you were in like, I don't know, elementary school or something, and you're getting passed around the room. Everyone's reading a page, a paragraph. It's your turn. You read something too literally. No one says anything. It's dead quiet, but you're like in your head, fuck.
Right.
Like you could have jumped out that classroom window and just it couldn't have ended sooner.
I mean,
All right, so what do you think of the medium?
I don't know much about it other than the trailer we saw. So did you ever play Second Sight?
No.
Okay.
That sounds familiar, though.
Yeah, so there was Second Sight, and there was also another one. There were a couple, like, ones that involved a little bit of psionics, a little bit of, like, murder mystery. There was another one called... Man, I can't remember. There was a remaster of it. Something Murder. It was one of the first games I reviewed, actually. I'm a big fan of these kind of games, so I'll check it out. I just don't know much about it, and I don't remember who this is made by. Do you?
This is by... I just had it up.
And like, if that adds any credence to it, I think would be like the one thing.
This is by, as it loads right now, Bluebird Team.
Wait a minute.
I've heard that name before.
Wait a minute. I have too. Observer. Okay. So, okay. Admittedly, okay.
You weren't a big fan of Observer, right?
So Observer had issues, but I was a big fan of what they tried to do. So that raises my desire to check this out, knowing it's from them. It definitely does.
Yeah, I mean, it looks a lot more high quality, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Just based off the gameplay. And I love the kind of... For those who have not seen the medium, between the spirit world and the real world, you actually see them split in the gameplay, almost in the same way you'd see A Way Out. But the difference is, as you walk around in one room, it's moving you in the other at the same pace, and what they're doing is very impressive. I think it's going to be I think a lot of people are really going to like this game. It's just about how well they execute this idea, because I feel like it can get confusing, it can get very janked fast, but I'm looking at gameplay right now on my side screen, and I mean, it looks so interesting. This is probably gonna be one of the first big games I play in 2021, and I can't wait. It's sort of turned into an Xbox exclusive in its own way, because it was supposed to be like a temp exclusive, and they kind of rolled it in even more. So I just like this whole, they call it dual reality gameplay. You know, it's a fancy way of saying split screen.
Yeah, I'm watching some of the
two things happen at once.
Some of the gameplay right now.
So yeah, if you're looking for horror, the medium is coming out January 28th, 2021, Series XS as well as PC. But I gotta say, I'm very much keen on this one. I think it looks fantastic. I do want to see more gameplay though. They've been a little too quiet. You know, there is some trailers out there, and for a game releasing in a couple of weeks, we need to hear more. Otherwise, I'm expecting a train wreck. There's just a certain tempo you have to have with your PR and your trailers and your gameplay, and when certain things are out of line, it does not bode well for confidence.
Nope.
So, fingers crossed for Bluebird Team that they give us something better in Observer. And with that, we're down to our last three, starting off with Scorn, which is developed by EBS Software. Scorn is a first-person atmospheric horror adventure game where it encourages you to explore multiple interconnected areas in a non-linear fashion as you solve various puzzles, enemies, and themes that are boasted in the game's multiple zones. Are you a fan of Scorn? I watched the gameplay multiple times at that, because there's definitely an atmosphere.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. It just was not clicking for me when I was watching it.
Me neither.
I think it just demos poorly, though. That's my guess. I feel like when you're holding the controller and you're playing it and you're figuring things out and you're feeling that atmosphere firsthand, I think then you're good. But watching it, there's just certain games that don't demo well. This was one of them, I think.
Dude, and I'm not saying I'm burnt out on them, but I would say you could count the number of good games that are sort of focused in this way on probably two hands, where they're like, you know, it's a dream world, you're going to hell, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, we've played a couple of these. Painkiller was a shooter like Doom 2016. Painkiller was very well done, and it was based in hell. A lot of arcana, a lot of, you know, the gothic trappings, but it's very rare. It is just very rare that they turn out very good. And so what I've seen of this looks gray and not catchy. You have to do some...
Looks familiar.
Yeah, you have to do some crazy stuff to make those sort of pop. So this one is probably the lowest on my list of like games that I'm, you know, really chomping to see.
Yeah, I would agree with that to some extent. I just outside of the Gunk, Scorn is doing the least for me.
True.
You know, because for me, I was reading up on it, and one of the first things they mentioned were puzzles. And I don't mind puzzles in games, but it usually has to be a part of something else. It can't be the core of it all. So fingers crossed here that Scorn does well, but I don't think we have much more to say on that. So I wanted to move on to, this is my most anticipated game out of everything on this list. It's called The Ascent. This is by Neon Giant, which is a team of 11 people. The Ascent is a twin-stick shooting action role-playing game with lots of missions, side missions, loot. It's got fully rendered cutscenes. It's got even a cover system. So it has a lot of verticality in its world because of the way that standing and crouching and how that works. You can actually end up sitting behind cover or getting up to higher levels. So it's all in a world controlled by mega corporations. They're aiming for 4K 60 FPS. They said it'll be on PC and Xbox Game Pass day one. But this game, I don't know if you're watching gameplay, but it looks so good in my opinion. I'm very excited for this.
2-player?
2-player. And I mean, I gotta say, I have a soft spot for twin stick shooters. I think of Hell Nation, I think of Alien Nation, and I think of there was another twin stick shooter.
There was a Hell Riders, wasn't
there?
Helldivers.
Helldivers. That was my favorite of them all. That is a great twin stick shooter because it's so hardcore and it's so difficult. Plus the friendly fire, it's such a good game. I really like that. And having, you know, progression elements and lots of loot, kind of a Diablo styled shoot 'em up. I just got to say it looks fantastic. Plus the level of verticality there. I genuinely think this game is going to surprise a lot of people. It looks wonderful. It's right when I looked it up because I forgot about this game. But it's back on my radar. I'm 100% keeping an eye out for this one. Are you excited about what you're watching?
Yeah, pretty much. I think my biggest issue with twin sticks has always been that the amount of content has never equaled the price of the game. So I'll buy it, you know, I can buy into it, get a friend, and you can beat it in, you know, a small amount of time. And then with twin stick shooters, they engage me a little less to return to them. So what I'm hoping, you know, because they're talking about lots of missions and loot and stuff like that. What I would love, and I don't know if it's possible, but I would love for a company to just be like, dude, you know, there's hundreds of locations. Because one of the problems with these games is when you look at something holistically and not through third person or holistically an ISO kind of format, 3/4 view, you see more of the world than a first person view, and there's less mystery. And so what happens is if I enter the same spot too many times and there's too many similarities, then my brain starts to step away and get a little less interested.
Of course.
Where with a third person or first person game, I think they can get away with it because you've got your little vision cone. That's it. So I hope this is like, you know, we've worked on it for a while. I know there's only 11 people, but there's procedural generation systems that can do it without it feeling repetitive, though it hasn't been done before. Looks awesome.
My guess, just based off the staff count, is I think because of the level of detail that's in the environments and in the models, and you can kind of see in the gameplay itself, I can't imagine they're going to have a bunch of zones. What I think would more likely happen is procedural generate the content itself to send you back into those areas. Because that's the thing is I love the level of detail. I feel like a lot of these twin stick shooters and whatnot kind of cop out. And I think it's just... because, you know, it's such a simplistic formula that they try to make it up in different areas. Whereas with this one, it seems there's a level of quality there. Because what the developer said in the video when I was watching was interesting. They said, you know, we don't want to just make a twin stick shooter. Like, why can't we bring the camera in for cutscenes and more intimate moments? Why
absolutely
can't we,
true. Yeah.
You know, like, why can't we make a full-on game? Like, it doesn't have to stay up there, the camera being in the sky, I mean, whole time. It can give you levels of verticality, and there's different mechanics you can roll in there. So when they mentioned side missions as well as main missions, that definitely got me hopeful. I think that's definitely good news. So I would say keep an eye on this one. The Ascent is, once again, from Neon Giant, team of 11 people, twin shooting action role-playing game. Looks really good. Highly recommend you guys keep an eye on it. That brings us to our last game on this list, though. Sadly, we're nearing the conclusion of episode 0. So, Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis. Now, I wrote out my own little synopsis of each of these games and kind of where it stands and what's happening with them, but I just have to copy and paste what Phantasy Star Online 2 is because New Genesis it might be a little confusing. So I feel like they put it best. Create the ultimate Phantasy Star Online 2 in which the time-tested elements are kept intact, while the game design, gameplay, and graphics engine will be completely redesigned and reborn in all aspects. So, Phantasy Star Online 2 will still continue to exist, which Microsoft helped bring to the West. New Genesis is a sort of relaunch that a lot of new players, I think, should look into, because I had played Phantasy Star Online 2, Karak, as you know. I had liked it. My friends had abandoned me. I was left alone. I was essentially the orphan of Phantasy Star Online 2. No one was there. And so I was playing by myself, and I thought, you know what? I'll just wait for New Genesis. So New Genesis is pretty much just a relaunch, redesigning all the content in the game. It looks a lot better visually. Phantasy Star Online 2 is more of like an action RPG set in a MMO universe. So if you're not into MMOs, this game will not be up your alley. If you're not into weeb shit, it will not be up your alley. But it's got really fast pace, in-your-face gameplay, and I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the music especially. So I think New Genesis has a chance to really surprise a lot of people. It looks like after all the years of Phantasy Star Online 2 existing, they said, okay, we'll spend money. And so they look to be making something a little bit better. What do you think of New Genesis?
I think the weeb stuff, I'm not, I don't even use that term, but I'm certainly not into it. But I thought Phantasy Star was awesome when it came out recently, and I had an absolute blast on it. So to me, the idea of making it look like a game that was made in the last 25 years is a positive, because that fucking game looked rough. And I played the shit out of it, and it looked rough. And I would say, for the most part, I get this feeling of like, guys, seriously, you're charging people for clothing or whatever in your free-to-play game, but the game looks like it's from the 1940s. Like, how does that work out? Like, how does it work out? I don't feel it's fair. So this seems to be more of the fair part, where it's like, okay, we're going to meet you halfway, so that, especially a game that's built on cosmetics, when your cosmetics look like shit, it's like, well, then why are you buying the cosmetics? Like, how do you do that? How do you think that any of that makes sense? This does make sense, because the gameplay is phenomenal. I did not expect to like that. I downloaded it. When was this offered?
Really?
When was this offered? The original, the Phantasy Star Online. No, I mean, like in the last 6-8 months on the Xbox is when I played it. Yeah. So okay,
it was sometime in 2020.
Sometime in 2020, and I remember turning it on, and I was a huge Phantasy Star fan in the old days, but I didn't know if I would like it now. And I was playing by myself, just like you. And I was still like, fucking hey, this is a blast. Like, I got to a boss. You're
stronger than me.
I got to a boss part, and I was like, dude, this is really fun. The base was terrible. The home base location was horrible.
I know.
Tons of
trying
shit.
to navigate that
and
shit.
trying to navigate it. And I was just like, and I've played some MMOs in my life. And even I was like, because it was back in the day when they didn't even graphically make a place look like it made some kind of sense for a character. Mm-hmm. They just didn't care. They just didn't have it in them at that time. So I'm excited for this. I think hopefully this will, return it to where the graphics sort of match up with all the other stuff that they've offered.
Yeah, I agree. It's it definitely is something that has my attention. I've been looking for an MMO for a while, and when I played Phantasy Star Online 2, for those who don't have the backstory, it's a tragic one. My friends and I were playing, and they just raged off. They fucking hated it. It wasn't even a particular enemy. It wasn't a particular mechanic. It was just, this is boring.
I remember this story, yeah.
Yeah, pissed me off. And so I was abandoned. And, I'm not going to play an MMO by myself, not because it's impossible to, but it's just that I have no interest in that. But with New Genesis, it certainly looks good enough to warrant that. And, plus, what's the next other MMO coming out? New World, I think it is, from Amazon. It's like, well, that's Amazon. I think I'm okay. I think I'll have to pass on that.
You're okay. Pass away.
Yeah, New Genesis is on the radars, and I got to say, yeah, I agree with the gameplay. The gameplay was fast-paced. It felt really good no matter what you were using. There was good sound feedback when you were connecting with hits, which I think is really important in action games. And like I said, the music, very underrated. I got to shout that out. So Phantasy Star Online 2 New Genesis is dropping in 2021. I believe it's early 2021. So if you're into MMOs, keep an eye out on that. Phantasy Star Online 2 is already there, but if you're looking to get started, then I would say just wait for New Genesis. This is a relaunch that will be amending all the feedback. Nope, you're good. Go for it.
I was just going to say, I do wonder if you and I enjoyed the gameplay so much, and if 2 was already announced, I do sometimes get a little angry that these companies don't just splurge for 3? Like, why is it not Phantasy Star 3? You know what I mean? Like, I mean, I get it. They're probably trying to turn it around, and that graphics is great. But why not call it Phantasy Star Online? I mean, they are calling it New Genesis, but I would like to see almost like what's the game? Monster Hunter Frostborn? Is that the no, Iceborne. That game, that DLC is almost the size of the game, of the original game. Like, it's ridiculous. The people I talk to who play the DLC for that are like, dude, this game is like, this DLC is incredible. Hope maybe Phantasy Star New Genesis is that. And if it is, that's awesome, and I would love to be wrong.
It definitely is going to be, because I remember doing a lot of research.
Okay, so they are adding a ton of content.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's a whole new thing, and that's what's. But the thing is I don't blame you for not knowing. It wasn't until I watched like a bunch of videos online that it was fully explained to me the way they've marketed it. And I think the naming has been a major issue. It sounds like an expansion, and it's like it's a whole new thing.
Yeah. Okay.
A whole new thing, and so. Yeah, I would say for those who are somewhat interested in Phantasy Star Online to just hold off.
Yeah, you can't beat the gameplay. Personally, to me, it's good.
Yeah, it's honestly, I haven't played like Black Desert Online, which I think does action combat, but does it? I don't know.
Dude, I didn't like Black Desert Online. It's spawny. You know, bad guys just standing in front of you, not moving. You know.
Yeah.
I think you're good to go.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I just, there aren't what I was going for is I don't think there are many action MMOs out there that have kind of the quality of animation and how kinetic Phantasy Star Online 2 is. Obviously, the sacrifice comes in some of its like environments, and you can see that they're pretty low res and all that stuff, but that's where New Genesis comes in. It looks like, as Karak said, a game that was made in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
So... yeah, that'll be coming out in the next couple of months. But that is a general overview of currently Xbox's 2021. I believe more will be added to this list as more events come on and we see more indies pop up. And we, of course, see more things from Bethesda even and other games that maybe Microsoft will be buying third-party exclusivity for, or other first-party exclusive titles that may be ready this year. There's other games like, say, Grounded, which are going to continue to develop underneath the Microsoft umbrella.
We have no clue where that's going.
Yeah, plenty of updates coming. And, of course, that's kind of the goal of this show is we're going to be honing in on all of those games and, dialing into that ecosystem more. So for future updates, we will have you all covered. But we wanted to sort of lay the groundwork for games that you can look up, get involved in, research, and pay attention to for the show. It's not going to be the only games we talk about, but, just for those who are diving right into Xbox for the first time, we thought this would be a great primer for you. But that pretty much does it for episode 0, Karak. We've made it. I wonder how many people are still with us.
Every single one that started.
Yeah,
for sure.
Hell yeah.
I challenge them. I look like 100%. I look like I did crank or something, just so people wonder. I was lifting weights this morning and I fucking did the barbells and dirt. Like I'd cleaned I was in the garage and I was lifting. I've had a really like anxiety issue in the last couple. I think it's just like you said, you're not able to go anywhere or do anything. And so I was just, man, it was like 3 hours in and I'm still like, what the fuck? And I smashed them together and it got in my eye. And it's that thing. I don't know if you've had that, but where you get something in your eye and it's like the entire world doesn't matter but your eye.
Yeah.
And so I did that thing where I dropped the barbells and I ducked them like Star Wars. I was like, whoop, whoop, as they passed by my head. And I just realized, man, I've been rubbing it all day. So just so people know, I'm not in the midst of a drug overdose. It's driving me nuts. But yeah, dude, thanks to everybody who sat with us. And I'd also like to know if there's games that we missed or if there's peripherals that they want to talk about, because I'm sure I'm going to bring up the adaptive controller because I have friends in the military who, can't play normal games, and that has unleashed the beast. Like there are multiple people I know who are dude, I've never been able to play games until right now because of that. So there's a lot of stuff.
We are 100% open for any criticisms, because this is why we're doing episode 0, and our show will take shape over dozens of episodes. So keep the feedback coming and rolling through, and we'll start to shape the show a little bit more. But this is sort of our groundwork, and we want you to rip it up, and we'll build something on top of that.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, with that, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for your time. We hope you enjoyed Defining Duke and Xbox Podcast episode 0. We will see you for episode 1 where we'll go into our news roundup, our Game Pass pick of the week, PC deals, your questions being submitted, all of that important stuff. So with that, we sign out now. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk with you soon.
Peace out.
Defining Duke, an Xbox podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is recorded from the good old USA. The show was conceived by Matthew MrMattyPlays Schroeder and me, Colin Moriarty, and is written and produced by Matthew Schroeder. Matty's co-host is Jeremy ACG Penter. Defining Duke's executive producer is Dustin Furman, and the show is edited by associate producer Ben Smith. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's shows, including Defining Duke, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer support level or higher on Patreon, and we're grateful for your kindness and generosity.